The failed contract. Vexthor stood motionless in the shadows of the Galactic Council's grand reception hall, his chameleonic skin perfectly matching the ornate marble pillars. The mission should have been simple: eliminate the newly appointed human ambassador to the Galactic Council, Sarah Chen. After 3 centuries and over 2,000 successful contracts, Vexthor had earned his reputation as the most lethal assassin in the Nexus Guild. Yet something about this contract made his secondary heart flutter with uncharacteristic anxiety. The reception buzzed with activity as diplomats from 100 worlds mingled beneath crystalline chandeliers. Ambassador Chen moved through the crowd with practiced ease, her red diplomatic sash standing out against her dark suit. Vexthor's compound eyes tracked her movements, analyzing patterns, seeking vulnerabilities. She was completely unguarded, a fact that should have made his job easier but somehow made him more uneasy. His neural implants had already calculated 17 different ways to end her life without detection. The nanite-laced drink in the server's hand passing by, the toxic gas capsule hidden in the ventilation system, the microscopic blade concealed in his wrist, capable of severing an artery from 3 meters away. Any of these would have worked on any other species in the galaxy. But humans were different. Everyone in the Nexus Guild knew it, though no one spoke of it openly. In the last standard century, not a single contracted hit on a human had been successful. Not one. The Guild dismissed these failures as statistical anomalies or poor execution. Vexthor knew better. He had studied the reports obsessively before accepting this contract. The patterns were impossible to ignore. Poison somehow never reached human lips. Bullets curved impossibly around human bodies. Gas attacks were thwarted by convenient equipment malfunctions. Even the most sophisticated assassination attempts ended in inexplicable failure. Still, the contract's payment was astronomical. The client, a shadowy consortium of corporate interests, clearly wanted Ambassador Chen eliminated before she could present her proposal for enhanced human oversight of interstellar trading practices. Vexthor's professional pride wouldn't let him walk away, even as his instincts screamed that he was making a terrible mistake. He made his move as Chen stepped away from the main crowd, heading toward a relatively quiet balcony. His skin rippled, shifting colors to maintain perfect camouflage as he glided closer. The nanite drink would be his first attempt, subtle, untraceable, and supposedly foolproof. The serving drone approached right on schedule, offering Chen a glass of Centaurian wine. She reached for it, and Vexthor's heart rates accelerated. Just as her fingers were about to touch the glass, another guest bumped into the drone. The tray tilted, and the poisoned drink spilled harmlessly onto the floor. Chen laughed good-naturedly, helping the embarrassed guest regain their balance. Vexthor's mandibles clicked in frustration. A coincidence, surely. He still had multiple backup plans. The toxic gas capsule was next. He triggered the release remotely, expecting to see the invisible cloud descend from the ventilation shaft above the balcony. Instead, a sudden change in the environmental systems created an updraft, dispersing the gas harmlessly into the night sky. Chen remained engaged in conversation, completely oblivious to the failed attempt on her life. Vexthor felt his professional composure cracking. This wasn't normal. None of this was normal. His neural implants were registering probability anomalies that should have been impossible. It was as if reality itself was conspiring to protect the human. With mounting desperation, he decided to rely on the most direct approach. The microscopic blade shot from his wrist, with perfect accuracy, its monomolecular edge capable of penetrating any known personal shield. At that precise moment, Chen bent down to pick up a dropped datapad. The blade whispered through the empty air, where her neck had been a fraction of a second before. She straightened up, still smiling at something her conversation partner had said, but for a brief moment, her eyes met Vexthor's. There was something in that look. Not fear, not anger, but a kind of knowing amusement that sent a chill through all 3 of his spines. "Quite a lovely evening, isn't it?" she said, speaking to no one in particular, but looking directly at where he stood, still perfectly camouflaged. though some of our friends seem to be having trouble accepting inevitable changes. Vexthor felt exposed, stripped of his centuries of professional detachment. He had failed, and worse, he knew. She had known all along. The other failed assassins' reports suddenly made terrible sense. Humans didn't survive by luck or coincidence. They were aware, on some fundamental level beyond normal consciousness, of every threat around them. As if to confirm his realization, Chen raised her glass in a subtle toast toward his position. "Perhaps it's time for a new approach," she said softly. "My office is always open for those interested in discussing more productive relationships." Vexthor did something he had never done in 3 centuries of wet work. He retreated. His chameleonic camouflage held steady as he made his way to the exit, but his professional pride was in shambles. The client would be furious, the guild would be embarrassed, but none of that mattered compared to the revelation he had witnessed. Humans weren't just lucky. They weren't just well protected. They were something else entirely, something that had evolved beyond the normal rules of cause and effect when it came to their own survival. The implications were staggering. As he boarded his stealth ship and prepared to leave the Galactic Council station, Vexthor made an unprecedented decision. He opened a secure channel to the Guild's central database and logged his first ever contract rejection. Target: human. Status: impossible. Recommendation: remove all humans from potential contract listings. He added a personal note, knowing it would be read by Guild leadership. They know. They always know. And they're waiting for us to figure that out. The last thing Vexthor saw before his ship jumped to hyperspace was Ambassador Chen standing on the balcony, raising her glass once more in his direction. The message was clear. The era of assassination as a political tool was ending. Humanity had changed the rules of the game, and the galaxy would have to adapt. In his 3 centuries as an assassin, Vexthor had never felt more alive than in this moment of failure. Something fundamental had shifted in the galactic order, and he had witnessed it firsthand. The humans weren't just surviving assassination attempts. They were reshaping the very nature of how power worked in the galaxy. As his ship disappeared into hyperspace, Vexthor began composing a more detailed report for the Guild. They needed to understand what they were dealing with. The age of shadows and silent deaths was coming to an end. The humans had seen to that, and perhaps, Vexthor reflected, it was about time. The investigation. The archives of the Nexus Guild stretched deep beneath the surface of Umbra Prime, a labyrinth of data crystals storing centuries of assassination records. Vexthor's access codes hadn't been revoked yet, though his failed contract against Ambassador Chen had sent shockwaves through the Guild's hierarchy. He moved silently through the dimly lit corridors, his chameleonic skin reflecting the soft blue glow of the archive terminals. The Guild's master archivist, a spindly mnemonic named Xira, watched him with all 8 of her sensory stalks. "You're either very brave or very foolish to return here, Vexthor," she whispered, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "The Council is still deciding your punishment." "I need to understand, Xira," Vexthor replied, his compound eyes fixed on the terminal before him. "There's a pattern here that everyone has ignored for too long." The terminal hummed as he accessed records of failed contracts against humans. The data stretched back further than he'd imagined, not just decades, but centuries. Every attempted assassination of a human target had failed, often in ways that defied probability. "Look at this," he gestured to a particular record. 300 years ago, Guildmaster Klovax attempted to eliminate a human mining colony leader. Every explosive device planted in the leader's compound spontaneously disarmed itself. Not one detonated. Purest sensory stalks wavered. Mechanical failure happens, even to the best. 200 years ago, Vexthor continued, pulling up another record. The entire Shadowborn sect tried to poison a human diplomatic delegation. 47 different toxins, all simultaneously neutralized by unexpected chemical reactions. The odds against that are astronomical. He moved through more records, each more impossible than the last. Assassination attempts thwarted by convenient equipment malfunctions, sudden weather changes, or inexplicable turns of fate. Humans surviving situations that should have been certifiably lethal. The Guild has been hiding these failures, Shira admitted finally, her voice barely audible. It was deemed bad for business if word got out that an entire species was immune to our services. Vexthor's mandibles clicked in frustration. It's more than immunity. They're aware of us, Shira. Every human I studied shows signs of heightened threat perception far beyond normal species capabilities. Ambassador Chen looked right at me through active camouflage. He pulled up newer records, displaying them in a holographic array. Look at the pattern. Early attempts were crude. Physical attacks, poisons, explosives. As our methods grew more sophisticated, so did the ways in which humans avoided them. It's almost like they're evolving in response to our attempts. Shira finished, her sensory stalks rigid with attention. But that's impossible. Evolution doesn't work that fast. Unless it does. For them. Vexthor brought up xenobiological data on human nervous systems. Their brains process information differently than any other known species. They have what they call intuition. The ability to know things without conscious reasoning. Kira moved closer to the display, her archival training evident in her methodical analysis. There are rumors, very old ones, about why humans were allowed to join the Galactic Council so quickly despite their relatively primitive technology. Some say the elder races saw something in them that frightened them. Vexthor nodded, pulling up more recent data. Look at the statistical analyses. Every failed assassination attempt has actually strengthened human diplomatic positions. They've turned our very existence into a political advantage. The implications hung heavy in the archive's recycled air. If humans could unconsciously detect and avoid any attempt on their lives, if they were actually evolving in response to threats. The Guild can't survive this, Shira said softly. Not if word gets out. Every potential client will want human protection. Every target will seek human allies. The Guild is already dying, Vexthor responded, displaying economic projections. Contract revenues have dropped 60% in regions with strong human presence. They're changing the fundamental nature of galactic politics, shifting it away from shadows and toward something else. Shira's sensory stalks drooped. Why are you showing me this, Vexthor? What do you expect me to do with this information? Help me understand what they really are. He brought up his own footage from the failed Chen contract. Look at her eyes when she spots me. That's not fear. It's not even surprise. It's recognition. Like she's been waiting for us to figure something out. The archivist was quiet for a long moment, processing. Finally, she accessed a heavily encrypted section of the archives. There's something you should see. An old recording from the first human contact with the Council. The initial threat assessment. The holographic display shifted, showing footage of the first human diplomatic delegation. As Vexthor watched, his professional detachment crumbled. The elder race's bioscanners had detected something extraordinary in human neural patterns, a kind of quantum entanglement that shouldn't have been possible in biological systems. They're not just lucky, Shira explained. Their consciousness somehow exists partially outside normal causality. They can unconsciously sense and influence probability itself when their survival is threatened. The elder races theorized it evolved from their unusually dangerous homeworld, but they never imagined it would continue evolving. Vexthor's secondary heart fluttered as the pieces fell into place. They're not just surviving our attempts. They're learning from them. Each failure makes them stronger, more aware. We've been unconsciously training them to be even better at detecting and avoiding threats. The question is, Jira's voice carried a note of fear. What happens when they decide to stop playing defensive? Before Vexthor could respond, his neural implants detected multiple armed signatures entering the archive level. Guild security forces, moving with purpose. They're coming for you, Shira said unnecessarily. The Council has made its decision. Vexthor's chandelionic skin rippled as he prepared for conflict, but something stopped him. A memory of Ambassador Chen's knowing smile, of the impossible way she had seen through his defenses. "No," he said, standing straight. "No more shadows. No more running." He deactivated his camouflage, letting his natural coloring show. "It's time we all learn to adapt to the new reality." As the security forces surrounded him, Vexthor felt strangely at peace. The age of assassins was ending, and something new was beginning. The humans had shown them a different path, whether they were ready for it or not. The last thing he saw before they took him away was Xira accessing the human neural pattern data again, her sensory stalks quivering with a mixture of fear and fascination. The galaxy was changing, and the archives would record it all. The hidden gift. Dr. Elena Santos stood before the assembled Galactic Council, her holographic displays showing neural patterns that pulsed with an otherworldly rhythm. The arrest of Vexthor and the subsequent investigation into the Nexus Guild had created an unprecedented opportunity, the first public discussion of humanity's unique abilities. "What you're seeing," she explained to the diverse array of alien representatives, "is not just regular brain activity. These patterns show quantum entanglement at a cellular level, something that should be impossible in biological systems." Her dark eyes swept across the chamber, noting the mixture of fascination and fear in her audience. In the front row, Ambassador Chen sat with perfect composure, though her slight smile suggested she knew exactly what was coming. Beside her, a containment pod held Vexthor, permitted to attend under heavy guard. His compound eyes never left the display of human neural patterns. "Humanity evolved on a planet that tried to kill us in countless ways," Elena continued. "Predators, natural disasters, environmental changes. We faced extinction multiple times. But instead of developing better claws, stronger muscles, or thicker skin, we evolved something far more unusual." The holographic display shifted, showing historical footage of humans surviving seemingly impossible situations. A child stepping away from a falling tree moments before impact. A driver swerving to avoid an accident they couldn't possibly have seen coming. A diplomat, Ambassador Chen herself, avoiding every single one of Vexthor's assassination attempts. We developed what we casually call intuition, the ability to know things without conscious reasoning. But it's far more than that. Our consciousness exists partially outside normal causality. We can unconsciously sense and influence probability itself when our survival is threatened. Murmurs rippled through the council chamber. A Mentarch representative raised their crystalline appendage. "Are you suggesting humans can see the future?" Elena shook her head. "Not exactly. We don't see what will happen. We unconsciously process quantum possibilities and act on them without conscious awareness. It's more like probability manipulation on a quantum level. And this ability is getting stronger." Vexthor spoke up from his containment pod, causing several council members to shift uncomfortably. Each failed attempt to harm a human reinforces and evolves this capability. The Guild's actions have been unconsciously training humanity to be even more resistant to directed threats. Elena nodded. "Precisely. Our studies show that human children today display significantly stronger quantum entanglement patterns than their grandparents. We're evolving in real time, adapting to new threats as they emerge." The council chamber erupted in concerned discussion. A Hygaxian delegate rose, their bioluminescent patterns flashing with agitation. "This makes humans too dangerous to allow in galactic society. They could be impossible to stop if they turned hostile." Ambassador Chen finally stood, her presence somehow filling the chamber despite her relatively small stature. "If we wanted to be hostile, we would have been already. But humanity's gift comes with an interesting limitation. It only works defensively. We can't use it to harm others, only to protect ourselves and those we care about." Elena brought up new data, showing failed attempts by humans to consciously manipulate probability. Ambassador Chen is correct. The ability only activates in response to genuine threats. It's a survival mechanism, not a weapon. Then explain why human diplomatic influence has grown so rapidly, another delegate demanded. You've used this ability to manipulate galactic politics. No, Chen replied calmly. We've used it to survive assassination attempts, which in turn expose the flaws in a political system that relies on violence and covert action. We're not manipulating anything. We're simply showing there's a better way. Elena advanced her presentation to its final slides. What we're proposing is cooperation. Humanity's gift isn't just about survival, it's about adaptation. We've learned to sense threats not just to individuals, but to communities, to entire species. We want to help create a galaxy where assassination and violence are no longer considered valid political tools. From his containment pod, Vexthor clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. The Guild's archives show that human presence in a region correlates with a significant decrease in political violence. They create stability. More than that, Elena added, we've discovered that prolonged exposure to humans can induce similar quantum patterns in other species. It's weak, but measurable. We may be able to teach this ability, to share our gift. The council chamber went completely silent. The implications were staggering. A galaxy where assassination was impossible, where violence as a political tool became obsolete, where consciousness itself might evolve into new forms. Ambassador Chen's smile widened slightly. We've been waiting for you to be ready for this conversation. Every failed assassination attempt, every thwarted plot, was leading to this moment. Humanity isn't a threat to galactic society. We're its next evolutionary step. Elena watched the reactions ripple through the chamber. Fear giving way to curiosity, resistance yielding to possibility. She brought up her final display, a real-time map of quantum consciousness patterns spreading like a web between species, between worlds. The choice is yours, she concluded. Continue fighting against an impossible-to-defeat defense mechanism, or work with us to create something entirely new. We're offering more than protection. We're offering evolution. In his containment pod, Vexthor had gone completely still, his compound eyes reflecting the quantum pattern displays. He had sought to understand why humans couldn't be killed, only to discover they were unkillable because they were becoming something far more significant than mere survivors. The age of assassins was indeed ending, but something far more extraordinary was beginning. Humanity's hidden gift wasn't just about avoiding death. It was about transforming life itself, one impossible survival at a time. The Alliance, the Galactic Protection Bureau's headquarters on New Terra, hummed with activity. In the 6 months since Dr. Santos' revelation to the Council, everything had changed. Ambassador Chen sat at her desk, reviewing the latest requests for human protection details. The irony wasn't lost on her. The very species that had once been considered too primitive to matter was now the galaxy's most sought-after security force. A subtle chime announced her next appointment. The door slid open to reveal Vexthor, no longer in a containment pod, but wearing a diplomatic credential badge. His rehabilitation and subsequent appointment as the Bureau's chief security advisor had raised eyebrows, but Chen knew the value of perspective from all angles. The Arcturus Confederation is getting nervous, he reported, his mandibles clicking softly. 3 more assassination attempts on their chief administrator in the past week. All failed, of course. Their human security detail saw to that. Chen nodded, pulling up the relevant files on her holoscreen. And how are our former colleagues at the Guild taking it? Not well. Vexthor's chameleonic skin rippled with what she had learned to recognize as amusement. Their contract volume is down 80%. Most of their best operatives have already defected to us. It's hard to compete with impossibility. A new alert flashed across Chen's screen. Priority message from Dr. Santos' research team. She opened it immediately, her eyes widening slightly as she read. Vexthor waited patiently, having learned to read human micro-expressions. Elena's team has confirmed it, Chen said finally. The quantum consciousness effect is spreading faster than predicted. Non-human species working closely with human protection details are showing measurable increases in threat perception and probability manipulation. Evolution in action, Vexthor mused. Though some would call it infection. Change always frightens people, Chen replied, standing to look out her window at the gleaming spires of Nuterra. But fear isn't stopping them from seeking our help. We've received protection requests from 12 more worlds just this morning. The view outside showed the new reality they were building. Humans and aliens work together in perfect coordination, their movements showing the subtle signs of shared quantum awareness. Training centers had sprung up across the planet, teaching other species to access their own latent abilities. There's something else, Vexthor said, his tone shifting to one of concern. We're detecting unusual activity in the outer rim. The remaining guild hardliners appear to be gathering. Chen turned back to face him, her expression thoughtful. They're planning something desperate. Yes. Our analysis suggests they're preparing for a massive coordinated strike. Multiple high-profile targets across dozens of worlds. They believe if they can show that human protection can be overwhelmed by sufficient force, they can preserve their way of life. Chen finished. How many targets? Over 300. They're calling it Operation Eclipse, an attempt to block out the new dawn, so to speak. Vexthor's compound eyes fixed on Chen. It would have been my strategy. Once. Chen smiled, and Vexthor felt that familiar shiver, the one that reminded him how humans had survived everything the galaxy had thrown at them. Tell me, old friend, what do your new instincts tell you about their chances? He closed his eyes, accessing the quantum awareness that had begun developing in his own consciousness through prolonged exposure to humans. The sensation was still strange. Probability curves shifting like liquid, potential futures flowing past his awareness. They'll fail, he said with certainty. Not just fail, their attack will accelerate the very changes they're trying to prevent. I can feel it. So can I, Chen agreed. But we'll still try to save as many of them as we can. That's the difference between protection and assassination. We defend everyone, even our opponents. She pulled up a galactic map, highlighting the patterns of quantum consciousness spreading between worlds like a neural network coming alive. The guild never understood what they were really seeing. They thought humans were just unusually lucky, then unusually aware. They never grasped that we were the harbingers of the next step in galactic evolution. A step that's already begun, Vexthor noted, watching the patterns pulse and grow. The latest data shows quantum entanglement patterns appearing spontaneously in populations that haven't even had direct human contact yet. It's like the galaxy itself is waking up, Chen finished. Evolution isn't just about physical adaptation anymore. We're moving towards something bigger, a new kind of consciousness, a new way of existing. A priority alert flashed. The first waves of Operation Eclipse had begun. Chen and Vexthor watched as reports flowed in from across the galaxy. Assassination attempts were failing spectacularly, not just because of human protection, but because target species were beginning to manifest their own defensive abilities. They're going to keep trying, Vexthor said quietly, until they understand. Chen's smile held both compassion and certainty. Then we'll keep protecting. Everyone. Even them. That's what this alliance is really about, not just humans protecting others, but teaching the galaxy a new way to survive. Together. Through the window, the sun was setting on Nuterra, casting long shadows across the city. But in the quantum patterns flowing across galactic space, something new was dawning. The age of assassins wasn't just ending. It was transforming into an age of protectors, of evolution itself. And humanity, once dismissed as primitive, was leading the way not through force or fear, but through the simple, impossible gift of survival. The new order. Operation Eclipse ended not with violence, but with silence. In the grand amphitheater of the Galactic Council, Guild Master Relith, last leader of the Nexus Guild, stood before representatives of 1,000 worlds. His once pristine ceremonial armor was scarred from multiple failed attacks, each mark a testament to the futility of his organization's final gambit. "We surrender," he said simply, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of tradition coming to an end. "The Age of Shadows is over." Ambassador Chen, now Secretary-General of the reformed Galactic Council, watched from her position at the center of the assembly. Beside her, Vex Thor and Dr. Santos exchanged knowing looks. The quantum consciousness patterns visible to their enhanced awareness showed not just defeat in the Guildmaster, but the beginning of transformation. "The Guild's assets will be transferred to the Protection Bureau," Ryleth continued. "Our operatives—" He paused, mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement. "Those who haven't already defected will submit to rehabilitation and training." The significance wasn't lost on anyone present. The galaxy's most elite assassins were choosing to become protectors, guardians of the very peace they had once been paid to disrupt. But it was more than just a change of profession. It was evolution in action. Dr. Santos stepped forward, her holographic displays showing the latest data. "The quantum consciousness effect has reached critical mass," she announced. "We're recording spontaneous manifestations of enhanced awareness and probability manipulation across all known species. What began as a human survival trait has become a galactic phenomenon." The displays showed neural patterns flowing between worlds like rivers of light, connecting species that had once been separated by more than just physical space. The boundaries between individual consciousness were becoming permeable, creating something entirely new. "We are witnessing the birth of a new form of galactic society," Chen addressed the assembly. "Not one based on force or fear, but on a shared evolution of consciousness itself. The ability to protect rather than destroy, to connect rather than divide." Vex Thor moved to stand beside her, his own quantum awareness now fully developed. "The Guild fought this change because we didn't understand it. We saw human survival as a threat to our way of life, never realizing it was offering us a path to something greater." In the audience, aliens of all species sat together, their neural patterns synchronizing in ways that would have been impossible months ago. The fear that had initially greeted humanity's gift had given way to wonder as species after species discovered their own latent abilities. "The question before us now," Chen continued, "is not how to maintain power through force, but how to guide this transformation responsibly. We are becoming something new, all of us together." Ryleth, still standing in the center of the amphitheater, suddenly stiffened. His compound eyes widened as the first threads of quantum awareness blossomed in his consciousness. I can feel it," he whispered, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed chamber. "All this time, we thought we were fighting for survival, but we were fighting against it." Dr. Santos' displays tracked the change in real time. Another mind joining the growing quantum network of galactic consciousness. "This is how it happens," she explained. "Not through force, not through training, but through acceptance. The potential was always there, in every species. Humanity just showed the way." Chen rose, her presence somehow filling the vast chamber. "The Galactic Protection Bureau will continue to exist, but its mission must evolve. We are no longer just guardians against physical threats. We are guides for a transformation that will reshape the very nature of civilization." The quantum patterns visible to their enhanced awareness showed the truth of her words. The assassination attempts that had once threatened to tear the galaxy apart had instead forced it to evolve. Species that had relied on violence and coercion found themselves capable of something far more powerful: genuine connection, shared consciousness, true understanding. "The new order we create today," Chen declared, "is not one of dominance or submission. It is one of growth, of shared evolution. The human gift of survival has become the gift of transformation. In the depths of space, on countless worlds, beings of all species were awakening to new awareness. The quantum consciousness that had once been uniquely human was becoming universal, creating bridges between minds that had once been separated by fear and mistrust." Vex Thor, once the galaxy's deadliest assassin, now felt the immensity of the change through his evolved senses. "We thought humans were impossible to kill," he mused. "In truth, they were impossible to stop from changing everything." The assembly rose as one, their consciousness resonating in harmony. The age of assassins had ended, but what replaced it was more than just peace. It was evolution itself, consciousness expanding beyond its original boundaries, creating something that had never existed before. As the sun set on the old order, the quantum patterns of shared awareness blazed like new stars in the darkness. Humanity's gift of survival had become the galaxy's gift of transformation, and the universe would never be the same. In the end, it wasn't violence that reshaped the galaxy, but the simple, impossible human trick of surviving everything fate threw at them. And in surviving, they had taught the galaxy not just how to live, but how to evolve beyond its own limitations. The new order was born not of force or fear, but of the most human trait of all, the ability to adapt, to survive, and to bring others along on the journey to something greater.